for today. We'll be going through all the classes we've had and see what are the things that is outstanding. So starting from CSS syntax. The syntax is what we've been writing all this while. And what does syntax mean? Syntax means the way you write a code. So we already know that to write a CSS, you need a selector and parentheses. You have you can then have in your body of your code, you can have your CSS property, then column. We then have our CSS value. So that's like the syntax. So these are like declaration of what properties you want the selector to have. So this is more of like the way you write this is syntax. So you have your selector, then you have the property, and then you have the value. So you can have as many property. So we already covered this part. This part is a done deal. So we also know how to identify selector, basic selector or simple selector, identify ID, identify class, identify elements, so we're able to do that. We've been able to do colors. One of the important things for, let me just do this so that we can use that to do example as we go. So one of the good thing about the IDE that we currently have, so we're looking at colors now. One of the things we currently have is the ability for, let's do the whole of the body. So the ability for the IDE to be able to give you colors, by itself. So you can pick color out and specify. The IDE can allow you to specify the color you want. So this has already done a good job for you on that part. So that's on colors. We talked about RGB, hex, all those information is here. Once you pick on this, you can either, if it's RGB that you are using, or hex, or HSL, be it as it may, you can use that on the IDE. The next thing we have the background. We also talked about background, how to bring in images. On the last time we met, we looked at how we can use multiple images. So that's also covered. We have borders. Borders is also covered. We have border syntax like this. Border. So we know how to use border. Solid. This will add to the whole element. So you can specify where, if you want border in a particular part of the element. So we already covered this. We covered border. You can specify border with border color, and what have you. You also have rounded edges. So this is all covered. The next one we have is the margin, CSS margin. This also is covered. So you can just specify margin, and we also deal with shortcuts. So we look at how you can specify shortcuts. So margin has been dealt with, padding has been dealt with. Now the one we've not been using so much is height and width. We've not talked about height and width, so we'll talk about it briefly. So what does height and width, what is it all about? An item has an height. So the div you're looking at now, the hello, there's a height, it's a zoom, and there's a width that it has. So you can force the height and width to change based on what you want to achieve. So I can say height, I can do height of this element to be, let's say 400, and immediately you can see that it has spanned to 400. We can set the background so that we can see that is working correctly, and do color white. So it gives you that, so you can see that the height is being adjusted like this. So the next thing I want to show you is the width. Width is just to increase the width of what you're looking at. So that's the width part of it. And you can also use percentage or any other valid measurement, mode of measurement that you want to use. Then we talked about the box model. Box model is sorted out. We have the text, CSS text. So CSS text talks about the coloring of the CSS, majorly for coloring, alignment, and what have you. Align center, align right. So that's majorly for text. There's also text decoration. Text decoration has to do with underline and what have you. So if I want to do a decoration on this, you can do texts. So these are everything you have on text, and I think we covered decoration and an align. So you can actually look at all the text properties that you have on CSS and guess what their results will be. You can try them out when you're experimenting. So CSS text is pretty much covered. So we have fonts. Yes, we did not talk about fonts. We talked about font usage, but we didn't talk about how we can bring in fonts into the system. So we'll leave that for Bootstrap. So in Bootstrap, we'll do that in Bootstrap. So let's leave that to Bootstrap since we're going to Bootstrap in our next class. So there's going to be CSS fonts. Even though to bring in fonts, you can do font family. So this one is to bring the current font on your system. Or if you have external fonts, you got an external font and you want to bring it in, like you can use what we'll be looking at in Google. When we start Bootstrap, you will see how we can bring in very nice fonts from Google Fonts. So there's this thing called Google Fonts, which allows you to browse beautiful fonts on the web. So from there, you'll be able to see how you can import nice fonts. So you can see beautiful fonts that you can use to do any of your projects. And you can do a search of the kind of fonts you're looking for. So all this they will put them to use when we are doing Bootstrap. Okay, moving on. So what we have next? So we have the same. We have links. So let's cover link. So link will take us to a place. That's fine. Let's cover link. So let's say we have an H1. Let's say list things I like, and we do this. So computer. So we do something like this, and of course we want this to be a link. I'm sure this is not new to us, but I'm trying to get somewhere. We are using CSS. I want to show you where the CSS will come to play. So let's link it to, let's say, Google, and this one too, or let me just do this sign. Okay, so what I want to show you is another CSS styling, which is actually an extension of advanced form of selector. So I'm just going to show you what that is all about. So by default, all your links that you have will be colored blue by default, and I'm sure you are used to that. Whenever you see a blue underlying text, it's like an hyperlink. So how can you change this narrative, this default browser behavior? How to do that is by styling it. So we can style the A element. We style the A element and we say color. We want to change the narrative and say, instead of saying blue, we can do green. Let's use that one that was bright green yellow. So from henceforth, anytime that's not good, let's use the green, or let's just change. Let's use green. Okay, so by default you can then see all your links then become like green, and you can say no, I don't want my link by default to have underline effects. You could actually specify that. Then you could do text decoration. Instead of doing by default, this is how you specify underline for text. If you want to underline text with CSS, you use text decoration underline. It's going to underline that text for you. Or you are trying to remove the underline, so you do none. That you don't want it to have any text decoration. So by default, you can then see what we have here. It's saying ball and computer, no underline. So the ideal thing is that whenever you want to do a link, you will have this effect on it. Okay, so before I go on to other things that you have in a link, is that there are 3 states or 4 states to a link. 3 to 4 states to a link. So let me go to yahoo.com so that I can show you a neutral website, and let's look at their link, one of their links. So by default, you will notice that some links are black, like this link we are seeing. This link is black. So what happens when you take your mouse over it? It changes to, is this purple also? It changes to purple. So how can you create that effect? That when you take your mouse over it, it's called an effect. You have an over effect. So when he's on his own, nothing has happened to it. It's just a link. Nothing. You've not done any operation on it. It's just a link. When you take your mouse over it, it becomes you've done an over effect. So I'm going to list out all the effects that you have. There are some effects that you can't see now, but as you use the site, you're going to be seeing those effects. Those effects are going to be revealed to you. So I'm going to list out all the effects in a comment section so that you can see all the effects available. So we have the normal effect is the link effect. By default is a link effect. The next effect we have, let me just use small letter, is visited. So this one is when you've already visited that page and you come back, the link will change. So let's see if Google or Yahoo implemented that effect. So let's click this one and let's go back and refresh if the link will change. So the link did not change. In fact, I can't even see the news there anymore. The news have gone. So let's try it again. Lifestyle, we'll come back, we refresh. So it didn't change. So they didn't implement visited. So visited means that someone has visited our link before, or you have visited our link before. So you can program for visited so that users will not be confused. They will be able to know, oh, okay, I've been on this link before. So we have visited, and I'll show you how to style all this link. Then we have hover. We have active. Active is the one that you're currently on at the moment. So for the sake of this class, I'll use few of these ones. So by default, I said to use a link by default, you use this column and then you say link. So this is what all your link will look like. When you use it this way, it's better than just to use without the link. So when you use it this way, you can then benefit and use the rest. So let's go ahead and test the over effect. You can see that we're not having any over effects. So let's create an over effect that once we take our mouse over it, it should be red or whatever color we choose. So how do you create an over effect? You do a column over, then you go and put your color that you want to change it to, let's say red, and I'm going to do text decoration. Something just came to my mind. This one, overlay. Let me try what this overlay looks like. I think there's a line that will cross over it. So yeah, that's it. That's the effect I wanted to do. So let me leave this one give it the underline. So when you do this, you have this effect. So when you take your mouse over it, get this. So these the effects you get from what we've programmed. This is for over effects. Over effects. So notice that you are not seeing the green anymore. Let me explain why you're not seeing the green anymore. So let's add one more link. So let me do A and I'll make this B. So I want to tell you why the links are different. The reason why the first link is blue is because the link has been visited before. The reason why these other two links are still green is because you've not visited them before. So let's try and visit computer and see what happens. So immediately you visit computer, it becomes, purple, I guess, or blue. So that's what I was saying the other time, that Yahoo did not implement the visited link. That way it doesn't confuse you. Know that, oh, I've been to Ball before, I've been to computer before. So how do you now specify a color for visited? So to do that, we do A column visited, then we can say visited should carry no underline, no underline. Then you must say okay, let's do italics. How do you even specify italics? So I want to do italics styling. Font style. Italics. So you can see, instead of me adding I to it, I can program how I want it to be. So I'm trying to check that. We are not seeing any difference. Okay, let's hold on. We might be firing a different command. So let me just do red. Okay, so the underline is still there, but visited, you can see that it changed to red because it is following this, but italics is not firing. So let me check this. Let me do orange. Okay, so our italics is not firing, so let's not waste much time on this. Let's move on. So I just want to explain the concept. The link by default is green. The hover effect by default is red. Then once you visited any link before, it becomes orange. So that's the link part. That's styling of link, the different states of a link. So let's move on. We have display. We've actually talked about display. When we're doing displays, when we talked about inline block level, we talked about we even did CSS layout that allows us to do display, grid, inline. So that is actually sorted out. Then we have positioning, which we did last time, but we're going to use this opportunity to talk about positioning very well. So I'm going to list out all the positioning systems that we have, how you can position property on the on a page. So CSS positioning is a way to display elements to display them irrespective of where they are in your view or in a view area. So for example, if an element is here like this ball and you want to move it on the bottom right on the screen, you should be able to do that. That's what positioning is all about. It's a method used for an element, and there are various positioning styles that we have on the platform. So we have so I want to modify this now. So we have static, we have relative, we have fixed, we have absolute, and finally we have sticky. Okay, quickly let's start work on them. So but we'll need a very good example so that we can use to demonstrate all these effects that we have. So let's wipe out all this that we have here and prepare our screen. So I'll just do CSS position, then I'll just do a bunch of divs so we can use to see what's going on here. Then here I can do top, I can do left, right, bottom. Of course, you have it like this. Is the way it will turn out to be. But you see how we're going to use positioning to put things around or put things in order. So I want to be able to see all the borders so that we know where things are placed. Let's do 2px. Okay, so we have this. Then yeah, okay, that's much like this. But let's make the parents interesting. Parents, so I can do parent width or height can then be, let's do 400 px. Okay, so you can see that all the four divs are in a very big box, so we can then test, hopefully we can test all this positioning in this form. Okay, so let's look at the definition of what we have here. Now CSS, let's start with the first thing that we have on our list, which is static. HTML, the HTML element position called static is the default for any HTML element. So by default, if you anything that is static, that's what it is. By default, these elements are in a static position. So that's the meaning of the first element. So you don't need to specify anything. You don't need to, except you are trying to change a property from one state to another. So by default, you have all elements in a static position. So the next thing we want to talk about is the relative, which is the second one here, relative. So an element with position relative is position relative to the normal position that it has. Setting the top, by setting the top, right, left, and bottom attributes. So you'll be using what we call CSS property. I'm going to keep calling it CSS property to be using. To use with positioning is you'll be using top, you'll be using left, you'll be using right, and you'll be using bottom. This is relative to the container that they are housing, and also depending on the type of position that you're looking at. So if we're looking at top, for example, the top element, so let's style top elements. Let's give it a class top and let's style it. So we do top, we style it to we do position, and relative is what we're talking about. So by default, if I just save this and call it relative, nothing changes in our results until we implement either the left, top, right, bottom, as I've said. And so this position you are putting it here is relative to the current position. So if I say left 20, so it's going to depend on where it's currently staying. So let me do percentage. Okay, So doing that percentage will have a very big boost or shift in that. So we can see how that move happen. So you are moving the position of this element from where it is to another one. Is different from margin or padding. Notice that it moves it even with the border. Notice the border. That's why I purposely use the border there. Let me show you the different effects that you have without, this. If you use margin right or left rather, 10% as well. Look at the difference that you have. These are the different effects you have. It's still the same thing, but it didn't go outside the container. So what happens if you use padding? Because padding will just push this forward. So you need to know the use of all these properties and when to use them. And of course, when to use them will depend on the scenario that you find yourself in. So this one is to move the object itself, the element itself. It's moving it away, irrespective that it's already in a container. It's in a very big container. Let's style the container differently. Let's style it red. Let's do the parent red, so that we can see the difference. So you can see that it went outside the container. Okay. So let's move on to the next thing we have there. So that's what relative is all about. So the next thing we have is fixed. An element with position fixed, is position relative to the viewpoint. Viewpoint means, the container that is having it, which means it always stays in the same place, even if the page is scrolled, and it can be controlled by the top, left, bottom properties, as we've used for relative. So a fixed element does not leave a gap, in the page, which is normally have been located. So let's put that to test. So we'll leave the top like that. So let's call this top relative. So that way we know that this was for relative example. And let's just name this one relative. The next one will be fixed. So we'll call this class fixed. And we can style this with fixed and see what happens. So let's remove the positioning. So we have our fixed mixed with right. You can see there. So it's fixed there. It's not bothered about the fact that there was right there or not. So it's fixed there. So you need to move it around to where you want it. You might want to move it in the middle or something. So we can play around and say top is equal to, let's say, 20%. 20%, or let's say 50%. So we have it there. So that's moving. So irrespective of what happens to the page, let's make this page scrollable by doing let's say the height of the entire page to be 4,000. So by the time you scroll, irrespective of, you can see the rest they've all gone, but the fixed is staying put. So you can even be more creative and say, oh, you want the fixed to be in the middle or something like that. So you could do left, let's say 25%, thereabouts, 50%. So that gives you, this kind of effect that you have here. So that's what the fixed is all about. So let's move on to the next thing we have. So the next thing we have is absolute. So let's look at our style. Let's change the what's it called now? Let's change the right to absolute. Then we have the class absolute. Okay, let's put the style absolute. So let's even define, let me explain what absolute is all about. An element with the position absolute is position relative, to the nearest positioned ancestor. So what that means is that whatever you do is related only to where it is housed. So if it doesn't have a container, it will use the body as a container. So we can do an example, and let's have an example so to give us a very clear meaning. Position absolute. Then let's even go ahead and play with width, and what have you. So to give us some dynamism to it, then let's do what's it called now? So you can see that it's already taking that space. So if you want to move around, so by default is based on where it is. So if you want to move around, let's say let's move to right. Let's do right. Right is 0. So you can see that it moved to the absolute right of this page. Of course, by default, by default, left is always 0. So you have it this way. The information is not what it's supposed to do. So what we're supposed to see here is that it's going to be based inside the parent, but you can see that it's showing itself outside. So what we need to do is to tell the parent that it should be housing elements, that are some elements that needs to be inside it, so that it doesn't allow all this abnormality to happen, like the system ignoring that is inside a parent. So how do we do that? To do that, you have to specify that this container that is red is relative, which we did. Okay, no, we didn't do that. We only do for relative. So we have to do the parent has to be relative. So doing that, making the parent relative automatically enforce that all the children are staying inside. When I mean all the children, I mean the one we're trying to make absolute. It will stay based on what is in the container. So if you try to move to the right that I did before now, right is 0, it will maintain that corner. It won't go outside. So you can use this to place item anywhere in the page. So what I mean anywhere, let's say this is let's make it a correct box. Let's do 100 by 100. So you can see this is top right. This is placing an object to the top right. Let's say you want to put it to the top bottom, or rather bottom right. So what then needs to be here is bottom. Let me try bottom 100% and see what I get. Oh, it goes out. I'm trying to bring it to the bottom. So let me do, of course, top. Okay. So it's ending here. It's ending here. So I need to know the height of the box, so that I can calculate where it should end. And the height of the box, that's the red box. By the way, the red box is called relative. The red box, alright, the parent is 400. So let's try that. 400 px. You have to remove 100 of the height, so this should be like 300. Yeah, so this is it. So if you want to create this kind of effect where you have something on the bottom right like this of an object, maybe you want to create maybe a clickable option here, you do something like this. So if you want to do left, then you have to do left here, and you have this effect. So if you want to do top left, you will do 0. I think 0 0 should do 0 0. It will go to the top, and in fact, if you not do anything, it should be in the top by default, top left by default. So that is what we have. And if you want to make it to the, and the reason why it's in box like this, of course, because we specify the box this way. So let me undo something and remove the width and the height, and we have something like this. The reason why it's not at the bottom is because we specify 300. So if you do something like this, you should have this here. Okay, let's move on. The next, I think the final thing is sticky. Is that it? Yeah, we have sticky. So sticky should be the last one. That's the bottom. Let's go and set that sticky quickly. Okay, so what's the definition for sticky? Sticky is to, from the name, is to make objects fixed. When you scroll past them, they will stay in line, just like a sticky note. So if I let's just try that and do positioning, then we do sticky. Sticky. Why is it not coming out? Oh. Okay. So we have our sticky there. Then what else we need to specify? Let's do, let me do background color. Color white. So what we then need to do is to provide the top, or you can, the top and the left, any of the positioning you want to add based on whatever you are doing. So we've added what's it called, 0. So if you add 10, it's going to adjust in place, and when you try to move the item, it will be in place. Notice that is within the parent that it lasted. So if you want it to last the entire of the browser, it needs to be outside this div, or outside the container that we have there that is dotted. So finally, let's do a real life scenario before we move on to the next thing. So placing an object around an image. So quickly, I want to bring up an image online. Let me bring this man up. I hope, do we have his image here? We don't have images, like a video. Okay, I think I saw an image now. So let's bring in this picture. And what I want to do is to experiment, to practicalize what we've done. So I'm going to put image background here on the parent. Background image URL. So just to give you a real life scenario. Okay, that one came. So what I want to show you now is, let's say we want to put like a caption for this person. That's what I want to show you, like putting a caption, something you will typically see on a website. So we can do, let's do 300. Okay, so one, the right caption will be here. depending on how what you want to do, so it depends. So you can see how sticky works, which is okay. Maybe you are saying, let me just put something interesting here. Then we want to put I'm saying what we want to do right now. Okay, let's remove the sticky feature, not needed. I want to put something here, right, on this part, and I'm going to use the absolute. This absolute is going to help us. We can use anything, but I think let's use absolute. So I'm going to remove fixed. Let's use absolute to put a text here, floating. It won't touch the bottom, and it will just be floating. So let's use absolute. Let's remove this one. So we have absolute, which is standing here. So we position it very well. Let's remove every other thing that we have. We have our absolute. Let's remove fixed. I don't want it fixed because as I'm scrolling, I want it to follow. I don't want it to solve. That's why I'm removing fixed. So we're not dealing with relative as well. So what I want to do is, we have it 300 here. We can have 250 here. Or from the bottom, we can say 100 px or 50. Let me see how that will be. Yes, from the bottom, we can say do 10. So you can see that effect, like from the bottom, elevate yourself 10 above. And left, let's have left 10%, meaning give me the space. Then let's have width 100%. Let me see what that does. So I don't want it to have this effect here. I don't want to have that effect here. So what that means is that appearance needs to be relative. Oh, it's already relative here. So I don't want that one to be there. Oh, okay, we have 2 left here. What's going on? Okay. Let's use a fixed width then. Let's do 400 px. And let's move it to complete that end. Or let's do 50 px. Okay, let's go ahead and start setting background and everything so it to start looking fancy. Let's do background. Background color should be close to that green that we have there. And I will introduce, okay, we already have that before, this transparency feature. Then I can do color. I don't want to do the border thing. I don't want to add the border thing again. Then I can do, of course, the color needs to be white. White. Then let's start making the font big. Font size. In fact, instead of specifying font size, let's just go inside it and say H1. Like, let's say what is happening. Then on the bottom, let's say like a narrative, like a description, just like they do it in news. They say something and then on the bottom they have it like that. So, but of course, you can see what is happening here. But instead of this, we can just do div. So we can then style here header. We're going to style our header. Okay, we have that. We can then do our normal system font to be 15. Default fonts are always looking ugly, so those are the things that will be first fixed when you start working with Bootstrap. So your font, everything will start looking fine. So the next thing I want to do is you can see that it's too tight close pack, so you can then start implementing padding and what have you. So you can do padding. Let's do 20px. Then you can do, I think that's it. We're done. I just want to stretch. It's too much from the right, so let's do 300. 350, 380, 370. So that is it. So this is the effect of positioning. This is an example of how you could use positioning in the system, to do what you want to do. So we've been able to position our text in this form. So imagine, so this is a real life scenario now instead of the example we're doing, and you could do other things. It can be that you want to position another image on top somewhere, that is different from this. It might not just be text, it might be something else. So this is using the positioning. Let's move on to the next thing we have. Because I know we did this before, but this is like a real scenario, an example now. Let's look at overflow. Should we look at overflow? So overflow is when you have too much content in a particular element and you want it to be fixed and spill over, or you don't want it to spill over. So all this we need to show you with example so that you see how it works. So overflow properties specify whether to clip the content or to cut the content as a place, and then you can scroll, or you want to show all the content. So what does that mean? Let's see an example. What does that mean? Overflow. So let's go here and do let's do this one. Let's still use what we have here, right? Let's now let's make sure that this one does not duplicate. Let me increase the parent height to 400. You're gonna see something interesting. Notice that it duplicates. There's a duplication here, but you want to cut it at this point. You want it to stop at this point. Let's first remove the repetition. I'm looking for a way to use this to do the example. Okay, let's return it back to 300. Is that 300? Let's now feed it information that will force it to be more than 300. We are about to feed it with information that will throw it off its trajectory. And how do we do that? Is by putting it inside here. You can see that the parent is limited at 300. So let's now load it with information that could make it go beyond that 300. So let's come in here and do, let's just say hello world, right? Hello world is showing on the top right here, top right corner. So what we'll do is we can force this to be more than what it's supposed to contain. So I will do P and do height. The original height of everything is 300. So I will make this one 500. Automatically, this one will be longer. So there's a way to know. A way to know is to specify the border so that you can see what is going on. 1px solid red. So you can see that this one automatically has increased. But what happened? This guy is not, there's nothing showing here. Again, let's put content, because if you do not put content, you won't really be able to visualize what's going on. So let's add content to this so you can see how overflow works. So I'm going to literally write in content there, and let me change this color to black or orange so we could see. Orange. Let's put orange like this. Okay, so yes, this is a good one. So because you made the parent clip at this, you know, this other one is overflowing through. Is overflowing through, you know, its entire width. Let me keep adding it up. In fact, let me now remove the width of 500. So even irrespective of the fact that the width is 500, as far as I'm putting content in there, what will happen? It will keep accepting it, and it will keep, you know, going down. It will keep accepting and going down. Where does overflow comes in? Overflow is a way for me to say, no, I want it to stop here. You know, you want it to you want to be able to control what is going on. Let's even see how the container of the parent is doing. Let's look at the container of the parent. How is it doing? Where is the parent? Yeah, let's see what is happening to the border of the parent. So let's do whose color? Let's do green. 1px solid. Okay, struggling to see the green. Yeah, okay, I think the green. Yeah, the green is put in place. Yeah, that's fine. The green is in place. So this is the paragraph. It has gone beyond, you know, what it can take. Of course, it can house a lot of things, but you want to stop it at here. You want it to stop here. This is where you want it to stop. So what you do is to set the what is it called now? You set the height. You already know where you want it to stop. You set the height. Let's say the height is 400. Immediately you set the height, it responded. But what happened? It still continue. Now this part that continues is called overflow. So what do you want to do with this overflow? Let's make it perfect at 300 or 280. Okay, so this part that overflows, what do you want to do with it? There is a property that allows you to either scroll it, make it scrollable, make it visible, make it by default is visible, you know, hide it from everybody, or make it scrollable. So the property is called overflow. So as I've said, you can hide it. So if I hide it, what happens to everything that is overflow? It goes away as if it never happened. But there's content there. So it is possible that you don't care about the content. That's possible. Anything that overflows is their business. Or another settings allows you to say, oh, if that content is there, make it scrollable so that people can actually see what is inside. So do you see the effect now? So this effect gives you a way to scroll through overflow content. So this overflow with scroll option. So there's also overflow with we've already done, I think those are all the overflow. Visible by default is visible. Hidden, you don't want people to see it. Then scroll. So I always use scroll with Y or X. So if you are specific with Y or X, you can see that it won't give you scroll bar option on the bottom, because we are saying you're overflowing with Y alone. And if you do, I think auto will be smart to know what to do. Auto will give it to you scroll, yes. So if you say auto, it will scroll, and you see it doesn't add anything to the bottom. But if you just say scroll alone, it will add to the bottom, which doesn't look very neat here. So auto, it's always good. So that's what overflow is all about. So let's move to the next thing we have here. So we're rounding up CSS, as I've said. We already deal with inline styling, like block and inline style. That's to show you span and div, when I was trying to explain that there are some elements that are inline or that are block. Example of block element is div. Example of inline element is span. So we've talked about that. CSS alignment. So this is a little bit advanced. It's more of like how you can align item, you know, in the system, like how to align text, you know. So it's a little bit advanced, but I think it's something that we won't have problem with by the time we start looking at Bootstrap. So we have opacity. Opacity is a way to make something opaque or clearer, you know. So that one is also not really a big deal, even though here we used it for color, background color. You can see how we use it here. This one is just, it works with color. You can actually specify opacity on its own, standalone. Is an option. So if you want to set the opacity level of this hello world, for example, you just need to say opacity, and then you specify how visible or not invisible it should be. You can see that we can't see that again. So if you select, let's say 0.5, you know, it will just be that in that level. So that's how you can specify opacity on its own. So you can have opacity for any element, either image or anything. You can select the opacity, you know, even for the whole website, the whole page. You can say the whole page should have an opacity of any value that you want. And this is how you see they blur the background of an image or a website. So if I do 0.1 now, you know, do you see that everything, it applies to everything? Notice even the title of the page, we've add opacity to it. So if you want to do this, so this is a way for you to focus on a dialog box. For example, you want to focus on a pop-up, and then you can tone down the opacity of the whole site and only focus on particular elements. So that is just that option you have. Then we've already talked about so forms. We'll talk about forms styling in Bootstrap. I think that's majorly everything we have. That's majorly everything we have on CSS. Do you have any question before we move on? Thank you for staying to the end. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and turn on bell notification in order to be notified when we release new videos. See you in the next one.